Well, hopefully that worked and we are live, and I will double check by going into, no. Wait. Going into.
Yeah, it looks like it's working.
We are good. So always questionable whether things are going to work there. So so welcome students, viewers, fans. What else? Who else might be watching? Detractors,
Voters.
voters.
Vote for an A in this class.
Yeah.
Hello everyone. Nice to see you. We're in the home stretch. We're almost there, and you're all doing. It's been great to see your work. I was going to say you're all doing well. That is largely true, of course, not all, but those of you who are not doing as well will soon be doing well when you start to catch up and all of that. But I have been grading. We both have been grading creative projects, and they're, as usual, largely excellent, which is nice to see. We were just commenting, no notation programs, please. This has to be done in the tool inside the course or on paper. But anyway, that's a better late than never comment. What we're here for tonight is Unit 6. So do you want me to jump in and talk about it?
I'm going to answer a question on the other one.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Okay. And is that showing my screen okay?
Yeah.
So here we are in Unit 6 of 6, home stretch. Due in 2 days, the 17th. We are not giving a extension this time. And the end of the semester is very near, and we need to all be wrapping things up, and we need to be wrapping up grading and getting grades in. But I wanted to say a general comment, which is that if you are getting to this point in the semester and you are in any way concerned about your grade or about anything in the course, please reach out to us, because we are responsive and helpful. And when people say, like, you know, whatever's happening and life happened and you just need help of some kind, we will help you. So don't not reach out, because then we can't help you, and then it's not fair to you, because the other person reached out and you didn't. So be the person who reaches out. This unit is short in one sense, but then it has this chord ID project, which is confusing to some people. But what this unit is all about is, like, we've built all these building blocks of music theory, and now you're putting them together to build a beautiful castle of music. So you think of, I have a 3-year-old, so I think of it like little magnet tiles, which are these cool little magnetic tiles and all this stuff.
You're talking about Minecraft here.
Minecraft, yeah, things like that.
So Minecraft castle, which is not pretty, but
right, yeah, but it's functional. But anyway,
got tree and got wood, so
right. So you're putting it all together, and
yeah, we have had some questions about 31 and 32.
Should I skip? Should I skip 30?
Why don't we come back to 30? Do 31 and 32, and then we can come back to 30.
Perfect. Okay. Harmonic function. Yeah. So this is, again, like a couple of earlier assignments, we're kind of asking you to do multiple steps and multiple components to build up your answer. So I'll just read. So step 1, based on a given key, identify each chord by the scale degree of its root. Use the chord's full name, meaning these terms instead of scale degrees. Then identify the inversion, then determine the harmonic function. So let's get into some examples. If I blow this up, why won't it let me do? Oh yeah. Okay. Does that make it bigger on your screen too? Hope so. So this is real music now, music in the wild. This is kind of a chorale or hymn type of format with 4 parts. You can think of them as 4 melodies moving along at the same time. All of them have the same rhythms, kind of like a hymn, an old-fashioned hymn in church or something like that. And then you have, the highest to lowest. And the biggest thing to keep in mind is that I've gotten a couple of questions about this. When you're determining the inversion, the only thing that matters is which note of the chord is the lowest note. It doesn't matter if it's in the treble or bass clef. In this case, all the lowest notes are in the bass clef, but that's not a given in general. And then it doesn't matter what the rest of the order of the notes is. People have asked me, like, if it's a C chord and G is on the bottom, and then it goes E, C, is that still for a second inversion C chord versus like C, if it went like G, C, E versus G, E, C, those are the same inversion, because the only thing that determines the inversion is the G, the lowest note, which is the third, the fifth of the chord, and therefore a second inversion. Doesn't matter what order the C and the E are above that. It's all kind of comes out in the wash. That's just a general comment. And then, so let's look at this first one. Each set of 3 answers is for one of the chords, obviously. The letters here are just nomenclature to help you answer the question. So, all right, all that preamble. So we're in F major. What is the name of the chord? So the first thing is, based on the key, identify each chord by the scale degree of its root. So there's a few steps that go into this. You kind of have to do this a little bit in reverse. I would say, like, you need to know the inversion, well, that's not necessarily true. There's a couple different ways you could do this. You had, Dr. Wilcox, you had a handy thing for figuring out the close position chords. It's like the
stack in thirds.
Yeah, stack thirds.
So if a scale is stacked seconds, then if you stack thirds, you get kind of the lowest possible ordering of the musical letters, one note apart, or one with a note in between. So if A, B, C, D, E, F is it stacked in seconds, A, C, E, G, B, D, F, A would be stacked in thirds. And once you have the notes in your chord, there's only one possible way to line those notes up into thirds, and that will tell you what notes in the bottom in the root.
Yeah, in fact, I can use these kind of for convenience right here. These
look
letters. At that. So this first one, C.
I meant to do it that way.
Oh yes, of course.
It was intentional.
Very convenient. So you've got, looking at this first chord, you've got C as the lowest note, then another C. Now remember, a triad is 3 different letter names or 3 different pitch classes. And so when we're in 4-part harmony, there's usually going to be a note that's doubled, meaning that there's 2 of them in different octaves. And so you can just rule out one of them. It's irrelevant. It's just a copy. It doesn't matter for the nature of the chord. So we're just going to say C, G, and E. So if you think of this A through G right here, ignore the H and so on. The notes here fall into C, E, and G, and that is already in the stacked thirds arrangement. They're as close as they can get with only one note in between each pair. The D and the F are in between. So we know that the inversion is root. And that means, so it does help to kind of work backwards, because what that means is that the lowest note is also the root of the chord, which is not always the case with inversions. And therefore, the lowest, the chord is a C chord, and in the key of F, C is the 5th degree of the scale, F, G, A, B flat, C, and therefore it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 dominant. And therefore, and then, so this, just in case you need a refresher, you now see only 3 categories under function. And that's because all of these other chords, all the possible 7 chords are kind of categorized into one of 3 functions. Tonic is in a category by itself, which is called tonic function. So that's a category of 1. Dominant function chords are one of 3 chords. The dominant or the leading, well, I guess really only 2 chords, dominant or leading tone. And then the third category, dominant preparation, is everything else. So it's kind of a hierarchy of categories. Tonic is most important, then dominant function are two of the chords, and then the other 4 chords in the key, submediant, oh, sorry, that's the same as, similar as leading tone, supertonic, mediant, subdominant, etc. Yeah, and submediant, sorry, I was getting confused. Those are all dominant preparation. So the dominant chord is obviously going to be dominant function. Let me pick another chord at random, or not so at random. Over here, I'm going to try to figure a good one. Yeah, how about this one at G? So we've got A, C, F, and another C. So again, we can rule out the doubling, just ignore the upper C. So we've got A, C, and F. Now let's look at how they land on our lineup. We've got A, C. So far we're in that stacked thirds arrangement where there's only 1 note in between. So that's good. Then go over to F, the next one in the chord. Now we've got 2 notes in between. That's not how we need it. We need the F to be as close as possible to the next note. So if this were circular, we would be able to go F, G, A, B, C, and F would be at the furthest left and therefore the lowest, and that means that F is the root of this chord, and that it therefore is an F chord. But now we look at the inversion and we see that A is the lowest note, and A is the 3rd of the chord, and therefore it's in first inversion. So we're going to put F being the tonic, and then these symbols, the 6 means first inversion, and then tonic is a category of 1, so it's going to be tonic function. Yeah, so I don't know if I should belabor any more of these, but we'll come, if you want me to come back to this, let us know in the comments. But for now, let's jump to the next assignment. We want to keep this relatively short tonight because we're all tired. Whoops, what did I just do? Okay, 32. Okay. All right, so now we're getting into an even more kind of real music in the wild kind of situation, because we're dealing with real pieces of music and harmonies that aren't expressed in this kind of block format. This is, the way real music looks on the page. And we're looking at also how music functions in time, and how it feels when you have like a phrase of music and then another phrase, kind of like phrases in a sentence, like first I went up the hill, comma, and then I went down the hill. Those are two phrases in a sentence, and music kind of works the same way. So you can't hear this, but I can. So you need to be able to identify when a chord is by ear, but also by sight, when a chord is dominant versus tonic and how it feels resolved or not resolved at the end of a phrase. But you can also use the notes that are in the boxes to determine what the chord is. So again, we're in F major, and now we have G, B flat, and then these are doubles of that. So G, B flat, E, and we can go think of that stacked third thing. So we have G, B flat, E. The B flat to the E is 4 steps. So it's not the stacked thirds thing. So we have to move the E down to the bottom. And then we've got E, G, B flat, which is a nice stacked thirds chord. And the root is E, which is the 7th scale degree. So it is the leading tone. So this is, and then we know that it's the first inversion because the G is on the bottom. So we have a nice answer for that. And then the second chord is F, A, and F. Now that's only 2 notes, F and A. And if you read the lesson astutely and carefully, you will remember that the 5th of the chord can be omitted, the 5th of the chord being C. So this is a tonic chord, and therefore it is a dominant function chord to a tonic function chord, which makes it an authentic cadence. So this, I don't know, I think this one's kind of fun because it's like you get to see and hear why these terms actually matter and how they affect your sense of the music. So maybe, I don't know if I should do another one. Let's get to another key maybe. Oh, right, and then we've got this second type of question. This is really doable if you read the lesson carefully and you know what the terminology means. As with this whole course, like if you're clear on the terminology, you will generally do well, and you'll understand what's going on in the assignments. And if you need refreshers, it never hurts to just be like, what does period mean again? What does a cadence really mean? All that kind of stuff. So we're in D major. I'll make this a little bigger. So D major, we have A, E, and C sharp. So that works out nicely to the stacked thirds thing. So actually this is a good example of where the order above the bottom note doesn't matter. Traditionally an A chord would be A, C sharp, E, but instead we've got A, E, C sharp, but that doesn't matter. It's still an A chord. And in D major, an A chord is dominant. And then, so that means that if a phrase ends with the dominant function chord, that means that it is not an authentic cadence, which has a more settled final feeling to it. And instead it's a half cadence, which means it's kind of unresolved. It means that it's only halfway over. Then we've got another A chord, A, C, E, but this time with the G, which means that it's a dominant 7th chord. And then D, F sharp, A, D, and that is a nice root position tonic chord. And therefore this is a cadence that is authentic and final sounding because it goes from dominant, ends on a tonic. And because the overall structure goes from the unresolved half cadence to the fully resolved authentic cadence, it is therefore a period. Yes. So that's how you do that one. I don't know if I should do another, but I think if people want, again, I'll come back to it if necessary. Should we go on to the project? All right.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. This is the most fun of all. Okay. If you didn't like the creative project, uh-oh. What the heck? See, sometimes just try it again, it works. Computers. So really this is kind of more of the same. Like it's just really, if you can do with the previous assignments, you can do this. And it just involves analyzing this entire passage of music. So you are first identifying the name of the chord based on the root, which means you have to be able to de-inversion it back to root position if it is inverted. And remember that with seventh chords, it says hint, there are 3 seventh chords on this page. That's there because if it's a seventh chord, there are 3 possible inversions instead of 2, which adds to the fun. And then identify each chord's harmonic function. Again, in those 3 categories, tonic is the category of 1, dominant is the category of 2 chords, the dominant chord or the leading tone chord, and then dominant function is everything else, the other 4 chords in the key. And then from the way that the cadences happen, whether they end on a dominant function, which makes them a half cadence, or on a authentic cadence, which makes them, or on a tonic chord, I'm getting tired, you can tell, on a tonic chord, which makes them an authentic cadence. And then from there, does it or does it not constitute a period? So it's really the same things we were just doing, but kind of a more extended example, and where we really ask you to do the entire thing. And we repeat the image over and over just so you don't have to keep scrolling to the top. I don't know if there's anything else I should go into here. I guess I could quickly do these cadences, which will basically tell you the answer. Why don't I leave it at that? And if people have questions, they can ask. Maybe we can keep this to a half hour or so. Is there anything else we need to cover?
Nothing's coming in.
Okay.
Question-wise on the Piazza.
All right.
Though, of course, people know that they can always ask questions later if we don't answer something specific they want.
Yep, of course. And again, to reiterate that we're here to help if you have concerns about your grade or just anything else going on that's concerning you. I am, for those in my sections, I am getting close to finished on the Creative Project 2 grading. I'll stop sharing. I do them in the order received, so I'm up to those that were submitted like 15 minutes before the due date, the midnight on the due date. And there are a lot of them. A lot of you were on at that time submitting. So it's kind of like a few days before it was due, there's like a trickle, 1 or 2, and then like starting the day it was due, there's like another trickle coming in, and then at like 8 p.m. there's kind of a bump, and then at like 11 p.m. before, an hour before it's due, that's when like most of them come in. So you guys are all living dangerously, but
I am also making progress, not quite as much, but we'll be catching up soon. But we do have some questions. How do you identify which chords are dominant or dominant seventh? And then maybe a related question, can you do a few more questions from the assignments if possible?
Sure,
so
yeah.
Maybe do a few more questions, and while we're doing it, hit the what is a dominant versus dominant seventh?
Yeah, so let me find an example. Let me share my screen again because I'm not doing that. I'll do this in the in the final project. So let me know if that's visible. So we're in G minor, which is a nice key, 2 flats, tonic is G. Now take a second and remember, if you can, why there are F sharps. Remember the unit on scales, and in minor keys, there is something called the harmonic minor, which is because if the F did not have the sharp, it would be a whole tone away from the G, the tonic. It would be a whole tone below the tonic. And by definition, a key needs to have a leading tone leading to the tonic, and by definition, it has to be a semitone, and therefore you have to raise the 7th scale degree with a sharp in this case. So let's find a nice juicy dominant chord, and then let's find a nice juicy dominant 7th chord. So are they all going to be dominant 7th chords? Let's see. Trying to find a not dominant 7th chord. I guess I'll start with the dominant 7th chord. That basically means that there are 4 separate notes in the chord instead of a doubling. And the dominant chord in G minor, think about it for a second. The dominant note is 5 steps above the tonic. So G, A, B flat, C, D is the dominant note, and the chord built off of D is the dominant chord. So you've got, here's a classic example of a D chord, D, F sharp, D, and C. Actually, this isn't a classic example because it's missing the A, sorry. Let me find a more classic example. This is a classic example right here. Second to last chord, D, C, F sharp, A. If you stack those up, it goes D, F sharp, A, C. They would fit nicely right in between. And that is, there's a 7th between the D and the C, which makes it a 7th chord. And the C resolves down to B flat, and the F sharp actually doesn't resolve up to the tonic, but it's okay because it jumps down there. So basically all that is to say the difference between dominant and or the dominant 7th and regular dominant is that C. It's that 7th note above the root of the chord. It's not a 7th note above the tonic of the key. That would be F. It's a 7th above the root of the chord, which is D. So I actually don't see any D chords without that. This one over here has the C. This one over here has the C. But that's the way that would work. So let me quickly do a couple of these. So first chord, actually I'm going to jump to a more interesting one. Let's go to the C chord. So the chord above C, which is, as it happens, a C chord. Oh, that's pure coincidence, by the way. So we've got C, G, C, E. So the top C is doubled. It's not necessary. So we've got C, G, E. And again, the order above the bass note doesn't matter. So it's really just a C, E, G chord. And so the chord name is based on the C, which is 4 notes above the G tonic. So it's tonic, supertonic, mediant, subdominant. The inversion is root because the root of the chord, which is C, is also the lowest note. And anything that's not the tonic or the 5, dominant chord or the 7 chord is a dominant preparation function. Do one more. Let's do the E chord that's above E. So now we've got B flat, G, B flat, D. So let's try to get that into stacked thirds position. Again, imagine, you can kind of use this thing here. So imagine we've got B, it's the lowest note. The next note above that, if you brought them all into close position, would be D. So far that's a nice stacked third. And then the next note above that would be G. So now you've got that gap D, E, F, G instead of a nice only one note being skipped. So we've got to move the G down. So we've got G down an octave. So we've got G, B, D, excuse me, and then that accounts for everything. So that means that G is the root, which makes it a tonic chord because we're in the key of G. But B is the lowest note, the bass note, and B is the third of the chord, the middle note of the chord, and therefore it's in first inversion. So now we can do our answers. Wait, where did the E go? Oh, it's in the next one. Okay, so we've got, it's a tonic chord. It's in first inversion, which is figured bass 6, and it is tonic function. So I think those are pretty good examples. I don't think if there's any other trickier chords in here. I'll just really quickly talk through this chord K. We've got F sharp, C, E, and A. So we've got to figure out which one is the root. So we've got F sharp, bring all the notes down into closed position. So F sharp, A could go right there in between. So F sharp, A, C, and then the E is actually another third away from C. So at first it looks like that's kind of a confusing chord, but it's actually in root position. And it is, the root is the 7th, is that leading tone. So it's a leading tone chord, and there's 4 separate pitches in it. There's no doubling. So it's a 7th chord. So it's a 7, it's a leading tone 7th chord. So that's a cool one. And my voice is giving out, so I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Wilcox.
So hopefully that was enough examples that you can go back and review or ask specific questions. The most important thing, you know, is to figure out what the root of the chord is in each instance, and remembering that the root is not the bass. So we discussed earlier stacking notes up by letter in thirds. So if you do that, you can figure out pretty easily with the notes you have in the chord and your note stacked in thirds what the bottom, what the root of that chord is. And then from that, you compare it to the scale you're in, and that will tell you the harmonic function. And then you just have to go from there. So hopefully, you know, if you can use those fairly simple tools, you'll be able to take something that feels complicated, but it actually can be thought of in a fairly simple way. So if you have any more questions, we'll be here to answer them. Try to get everything in by Tuesday at midnight. And we are continuing to grade, and hopefully we'll have those done in a fairly quick fashion before the holidays, so you can celebrate your triumph over with friends and family with a little nog, and you can play everyone your magic Christmas tunes about the poem of spring, and that would be great. And share some nuggets with everyone. So from all of us here at Music 133, wishing you Godspeed for the end of the semester, and please reach out to us if you have more questions.
Please do. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night, everyone.